group and are virtually qualified already ahead of their match tomorrow night. We'll hear from the Scotland camp later in the show. Now, this is Drive Time with me, Fiona Stalker. It's just coming up to 6 minutes past 5. Good to have you with us tonight. We're with you until 6 o'clock. Scotland's Health Secretary has called for a public inquiry to be held into the disgraced brain surgeon Sam Eljamel and admitted he had real concerns over the way NHS Tayside handled complaints about the botched surgeon. Eljamel was the former head of neurosurgery at Ninewells Hospital and had been operating on patients between 1995 and 2013. His practice first came under scrutiny in 2011. Health Secretary Michael Matheson spoke in the Parliament this afternoon.
I have reflected on the concerns of former patients and MSPs since the findings were considered by the board of NHS Tayside, and I'm clear that the board's governance obligations were repeatedly not implemented in respect of concerns about Mr Eljamel. I consider that this now means that the commissioning of a full public inquiry under the terms of the Inquiries Act 2005, with the powers to compel witnesses, is the only route to get to the bottom of who knew what and when and what contributed to the failures described by NHS Tayside. Let me say at this point that I know that this will inevitably be a lengthy process and that, as I said earlier, a full public inquiry will not necessarily answer the individual clinical questions for each former patient about their own particular circumstances. For that reason, I still do consider that an independent case review of patients' individual clinical cases, where that is what individual patients want, remains necessary. This will allow a person-centred, trauma-informed review of each patient's own clinical case, addressing their individual needs and circumstances and attempting to offer answers in a bespoke and personalised way that an inquiry will not. There are former patients who are still living each day with the consequences of their treatment by Mr Eljamel, and addressing their personal needs in an individual clinical review that is conducted independently of NHS Tayside remains an important part of this process. I want this to begin as soon as possible and not to be delayed by the announcement of our intention to commission a public inquiry. Presiding Officer, for the sake of those patients directly affected, for the confidence of the community in Tayside and for the promotion of patient safety more broadly across Scotland, I now believe a full public inquiry is needed. I have now asked my officials to begin to make the necessary arrangements, and I will continue to update Parliament as these arrangements progress.
Well, that's the Health Secretary Michael Matheson speaking there at Holyrood this afternoon. Listening to that is Eljamel's former patients Leanne Sutherland, who received surgery in 2011, and Theresa Mallet, who had surgery in 2012. Good afternoon to both of you. Leanne, if you would, first of all, would you tell us what happened to you, please?
Yeah, so I suffer from a condition called Arnold-Chiari malformation. And in 2010, after suffering from years of migraines, I was finally given my first MRI scan, which pointed this out. I received a letter saying that acupuncture would be able to help me, and it would be a contraindication in the future if I was to ever receive a lumbar puncture. I then received another letter saying that Professor Eljamel had seen my scans and wanted to operate, and I was the perfect candidate for an Evicel study. That study failed. I had 7 craniotomies, which also went through my back and my abdomen. A junior doctor did give me one near fatal lumbar puncture, and I heard my spine snap on the table whilst my mum was in the room. I've got my medical records, and under that it says failed lumbar puncture, and I never found out who it was. It's not recorded. I spent 4 months in hospital. Every one of my veins collapsed before I was PICC lined, and I fully believe that I was medically tortured for 4 months.
How are you now, Leanne?
My life's never been the same. Some days I use crutches. Last week I was up 4 mornings injecting my leg with debilitating migraines, and I had to cancel work, and that meant I couldn't go about my daily life, i.e. doing shopping. I spent most of my day screaming in bed, and that is how my life is now.
Leanne, stay with us if you would. So we're going to bring in Theresa here, Theresa Mallet. Theresa, you've been the driving force in campaigning for this. You previously confronted the First Minister. You later met with him. What's your response to today's news?
It's very welcome news. I joined the group the end of May, so I've not been in it for such a long time. But I was incensed when I heard everybody's stories and knew my own. So I welcome today's, but I would like to see what the route they're going down the inquiry. I want to know details, and we need to get the significant and prolonged corporate failings sorted. We have to make sure our hospitals are safe.
Theresa, how are you after your surgery in 2012? What have you been left with?
Well, I had sciatic surgery, and I was told it was complete success by Eljamel to never recover and get worse. So that was 11 years ago. I'm now 61. I use crutches. I have a mobility scooter for really bad days. Even worse days, I can't get out. Sometimes I can't get out of bed. I'm in so much pain. And that's their life 24/7.
Leanne,
it's awful.
Yeah.
Sorry, Theresa. Leanne, that's Theresa talking about how she feels today. What was going through your mind? How were you feeling when you heard the announcement at the Scottish Parliament this afternoon?
I actually I fell to my knees because, to be fair, we have fought for this, and Mr. Matheson has came forward and granted us that. I know it will be a severely long process, but this process has been long enough. I was operated on in 2011, and I've been waiting on this day. I understand there'll be hurdles to cross and different things, but this is what we have asked for. So, I know it's going to be a long road ahead. It's going to be probably still emotional as it always has been. And I just look forward to the future and to try to get some answers. And honestly, an apology wouldn't go amiss. My life's been taken from me in a way. And I'm still in shock, to be honest. It's completely out of the blue for me.
Just take your time, Leanne. What answers do you need?
Well, I need to know that the surgery that I had done, some of them weren't necessary, and that I wasn't a perfect candidate for an Eljamel study, and that doctor shouldn't have made my spine snap on the table, and that the care I received wasn't satisfactory, and that I was one of his guinea pigs, to be perfectly honest. I had 7 surgeries in 4 months. 7 general anaesthetics on a 21-year-old's body is a lot.
Theresa, what do you want out of the public inquiry? What's important to you?
Well, like Leanne, like everyone that's in the group, we need answers. We need to know why was his references not checked, his credentials, why was he allowed to keep on practising after the reported, why people haven't been listened to about it. Successive boards and successive, ministers, why weren't we listened? And it's taken to this, and it's had a toll on us all. And we're not finished yet. We've got the inquiry to go through. And it should never have been like this. We've got to know our hospitals are safe. We've got to be safe practices.
Leanne, I can't imagine how tiring this must have been, and you're, along with the chronic pain you're under, but this fighting to get, I suppose, to this point today.
Yeah, the fight for the answers. I also just want to add as well, this is and also a step forward for my mum, who watched her daughter go through all that, and to thank her for being by my side even at 5 in the morning whilst I'm still injecting my legs. My mum had to watch every single thing that her daughter went through, and it's not just the victims here. There was families involved too, and I could just hope this step forward, gets us more answers.
Theresa, that's a very good point Leanne's made, hasn't it? We're talking about the patients, and I think that the number that my colleague Lucy Adams has been talking about is around about 150. But it's the ripple effect, isn't it, that Leanne was spelling it there? The ripple effect to family and friends, I guess.
Yes, there's more patients than that. A lot more patients than that. But the Rose will probably give out the correct amount.
But I suppose it's the impact on family.
Everybody. The families, it's absolutely wrecked families, relationship, put such a strain. Leanne's mum has become part carer. And, you know what I mean? She'd never have had in it. My daughter and my grandsons, like 7-year-old, have been looking out for their granny because I can't do things and, granny's having a bad day or whatever like that. It's never been like that. Absolutely awful effect it's had on us.
Leanne, I'm going to read a statement. We've just had a statement from NHS Tayside into the public inquiry announcement. Let me just read you this. The Board of NHS Tayside supports today's announcement of a public inquiry into Professor Eljamel's practice. Will do whatever's required to contribute and participate fully in the process. NHS Tayside sincerely apologised to all former patients of the surgeon when it published the findings and recommendations of its due diligence review into the former neurosurgeon last week. The aim of that review was to provide a fresh assessment of the professional, clinical and corporate governance position relating to Professor Eljamel's tenure. NHS Tayside says it will continue to do whatever's required to support all independent processes which are established. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's just another statement, to be honest. I look forward to receiving some sort of trauma therapy, to be honest with you. And I think, I'm going to be honest, I think I'll have to maybe read that statement a couple of times and try and process it a bit better. I feel like maybe that apology, if it is an apology, it's a start. They're now taking accountability. I mean, to give a public inquiry means there was someone causing harm and that it needs to be looked into. And I can only look forward to trying to get some answers and to be able to move forward with my life and try to possibly, put this to bed and be able to move on. Because, I mean, I was harmed in 2011 and it's, still there. Still much so there.
Leanne, what I can do is get one of our producers to get this statement to you after we're finished our interview. I'm sure when we're off air, because we have your details, so I can get that statement to you.
That'd be much obliged.
Theresa, Leanne was saying there that she's just looking at some way of moving forward with her life. There's some things, obviously, that she can't change. What would allow you to move forward, do you think?
Getting the answers and getting all the evidence and people telling the truth in a public inquiry. To know that and to know it's hard because you're not believed and, it's blamed on this and it's blamed on that, blamed on your mental health even. And we knew we were telling the truth, and that's a hard thing. So we all need to come to terms with an awful lot, and it's going to be hard going through this public inquiry. But it can't be any harder than the last decades we've spent living like this.
And just very finally, Leanne, if you wouldn't mind, and briefly, does this public inquiry, the announcement of it, make you feel that you have been believed, perhaps?
Yeah, possibly in a way. I mean, my case will be looked into. Like I said, I spent 4 months, so it might be quite lengthy for my case. But I in a wee way, I don't feel as insane as I did. I was told this man saved my life, and I knew he never. There was surgeries that were done on me that when I woke up, I said, he's opened me up and he hasn't done anything. And to be told by my own mum, don't be silly, you would never do that. And I truly believe that, and I want answers. I want answers for my mother as well.
Listen, thank you to both of you so much tonight for coming on and being
no problem.
So candid. Take care, both of you. That's Leanne Sutherland there, who received surgery in 2011, and Theresa Mallet there, who had surgery in 2012. You can see more on this story on BBC Reporting Scotland, BBC One at 6:30 and 9 on the BBC Scotland channel at 9 with our Special Investigations correspondent Lucy Adams, who's been following the case for years.